We're only an hour in, so I think we'll move on with Paul Gray's talk about the upcoming eclipse. Paul is a longtime observer and astroimager. Has his own observatory down in the valley. So, he's uh, experienced a few eclipses, had a few under his belt. So very interesting, Paul, to hear what you have to say.
Thank you, David. And actually, that's one eclipse. I have one eclipse under my belt. Everybody can hear me, I assume. Good. All right. Let's jump right in. So, yeah, if you've been in astronomy for any length of time, you've been doing this hobby, you should know there's an eclipse coming up in April. If you don't, you've been living under a rock, or you've just found the Astronomy Society or found out about us and found astronomy personally and have no idea. But either way, the big news is we have an eclipse coming in April 2024, April the 8th. It's now 2 months and 4 days, 3 days away, something like that. So it's coming quick. But this talk is not going to be about how to image an eclipse. I'm not going to get into any of that stuff. This is mainly about why you want to see one and where you should go or why you should think about where you're going. I do want to throw this disclaimer out there. I'm not responsible for anyone who gets addicted to eclipses and wants to keep going seeing these things all around the world. I know there's probably at least a handful of people online here today that have seen 3, 4, 5, and more eclipses. Um, they have a lot more experience chasing them than I do. I did one eclipse chase so far, 35 years of astronomy, and only 2017 was my first one. I was not fortunate to get to any of the other ones in the past. So for the beginners here, or even those who haven't been around long enough to really understand what a total, I just wanted to show a little diagram, not to scale, of course. Basically, we get a solar eclipse when the moon passes between us and the sun. It does not happen all the time because of the angle of the orbit of the moon takes it quite often above or below the sun. But when it does happen to pass directly between us, we do get an eclipse. If it does not pass directly between us, we get a partial. If it does pass directly between us, then we get a total or an annular eclipse. And sometimes even though it's directly between us, the moon can be at its farthest point in its orbit, so the apogee, and therefore the umbra shadow does not actually touch the surface of the Earth. We end up with an annual eclipse, not a total. So,
good.
All right. Try that over. Opening slide, total eclipse now. Can I get this to advance? Why is it not advancing for me? Now it's advancing. Correct? Slide 2?
Yep, we can see display.
All right. So again, I'm not responsible for anyone who gets addicted to eclipses. The diagram of how the total eclipse works when the moon passes between us and the Earth. Again, the moon is close enough to us that it actually casts its umbra shadow on the Earth, creating a path of totality. If it is not near us and it's further in its orbit near apogee, it'll be beyond the distance that the umbra shadow would not contact the Earth's surface. Therefore, we just see the annual eclipse. We did have one of those in 1994. Went right over Halifax. A number of us here in this meeting actually observed that 30 years ago almost. So again, you end up typically what we call these are the ring of fire, the annular eclipse. You still see a thin edge of the sun all the way around the outer edge of the disk of the moon. Therefore, it does not get completely dark. You do not get all to see the flares and prominences on the coming off the edge of the sun. You don't get to see the corona of the sun in the sky. They are still pretty neat to see. You still get a cooling effect. You still get some changes in weather patterns and dying of the wind and stuff because you're still covering 80, 85, 90, even sometimes as high as 95, 97% of the sun. So they are interesting, but they are not total. Total is totally different. Again, the moon's close enough that it's large enough in apparent size to block the sun's disk entirely. All you get to see is those prominences sticking off the edge of the sun that are long enough to extend out beyond the edge of the moon's disk. The solar corona, of course, is extended off through the sky. Very spectacular, whether it's naked eye, whether it's through binoculars, through a telescope. Every focal length from the unaided eye to a telescope gives you something different to see during totality. It's an experience unlike any other. Terence Dickinson, the late Terence Dickinson once wrote the top 10 things you can experience in astronomy. Number one is total eclipse of the sun, along with two other things one of them is discovery. So um, this is right up there. If you've never seen a total eclipse, you need to make an effort to go see one. In this case, you need to make an effort to see the next one. The reason why you need to make an effort to see the next one is in our lifetimes, for most of us in this meeting, the next one is the only one that goes through our backyard. So this is a path or a map of solar eclipses between 2021 and 2040. 2040 is another 16 years down the road, and as you can see, the red paths are all for annular eclipses. They're not totals, but all those blue paths are for totals, and the only one between now and 2040 is the one coming up in May. So if you miss this one, you're going to have to travel. Now, there are some interesting ones on this map I'm going to point out just for those who do want to travel and see other ones. The one coming up in May, actually, if you were to go to the Mexico, I should point out this, star symbols on each path is the point of maximum eclipse. That's where the eclipse is the longest. So in this case, if you were to go to Mexico, I believe the eclipse is almost 4 minutes or a little over 4 minutes in duration for totality. Those of us that went to Nebraska, a few of us are here. A few of us went to Nebraska and Wyoming and other places. While we were in Nebraska, we witnessed an eclipse that was about 2 minutes and 35 seconds long. It's a long way to go for 2.5 minutes, but it's pretty neat. If you really want to go see a long eclipse, right here, Egypt, Libya, across northern Africa, Gibraltar, southern Spain, 2027. It's almost 7 minutes in duration. That's the next big one. Not a great part of the world that I'd be interested in traveling to right now, but who knows? It might settle down. There might be spots that are good to go to. I expect Gibraltar in southern Spain will be just packed. Everybody from Europe will be going there. The weather odds are good. It's August. That time of year is beautiful. So looking forward, that's really the next great eclipse to mark on your calendars. But again, if you don't want to pay the thousands of dollars to travel to get to one, this is it. We have this one coming up through our neck of the woods in 2 months' time. I want to talk a little bit about what you'll experience during an eclipse. Everyone thinks we go to see totality, and we do. There's a lot going on at an eclipse beyond totality. Yes, we want to see the totality. That's the big payoff. That's that aha moment, the one that makes you feel real small in the universe and realize there's bigger forces at play than us, gravity and physics and everything else that's going on. But as you view the eclipse, it's a weird sensation experience. Everybody experiences eclipse differently. Quite often, people say, when you see that first notch of the moon taking a notch out of the sun, the very first contact and partial phase, there's an excitement and there's also a feeling of, okay, we're here, we're in the right spot, it's clear, we can see it. You're a little at ease. It's like good. Um, I actually still felt quite anxious and going like, holy crap, this is really happening. And there's a few clouds around. So am I in the right spot or am I not in the right spot? And what do I need to do? And so on. And how much time do we have before this gets going? And it's happening. I think that's the biggest realization. It's like, this is really happening. We are really here. And, you know, like it or not, it's going to happen within the next hour and a half, 2 hours. Totality is going to take place. And either the clouds that are around where we're at are going to play a role, or it's perfectly clear and you can relax and think this is going to go good. But um, I wouldn't say I'm totally at ease when the first contact starts, but I think the excitement starts to ramp up. Around 75% eclipse, for those who have not seen even a partial eclipse, you'll notice that shadows start to get a little sharper. So the reason is that as the sun becomes, the apparent visible sun becomes smaller in the sky, it's getting closer and closer to a point source. It's not a complete point source, but it is getting smaller. That point source will cast more shadow than a non-point source. You don't get the flooding of light around objects and so on. So this is quite often what causes the little crescent shapes of the sun you see in pictures on the ground under trees or through hats or through strainers that people take of. Good example of that I'll show you in a second. Around 85% coverage, the sky actually starts to darken enough that you're kind of into what would be considered to be nautical twilight, which makes Venus easily visible actually during nautical twilight. So you won't see Venus pop out. And around 90%, you probably will pick Jupiter out of the sky if Jupiter was above the horizon. I'm not sure the circumstances for this one, but Venus will be up there. If there's trees around your site, this is the point where you'll start to see the little pinhole camera effect of the crescent sun underneath those trees in the shadow. Here's two shots of my two youngest kids who are much younger then than now, but we were in Nebraska in cornfields, but luckily where we ended up being, there were actually trees around, and we were able to witness this effect of these crescent shapes. So it's pretty cool, and it's something to see and observe as the eclipse progresses on. Depending on your surroundings, you're going to experience other strange things. You'll notice that onset of twilight night within the 10-15 minutes before totality. If you look in the southwestern sky for this eclipse, you'll notice the darkness on the horizon. You'll see that shadow slowly starting to creep over the horizon towards you within those last few minutes for sure. You'll want to watch for shadow bands. You probably want to what's shadow bands. So shadow bands are a neat effect of craters in the mountains on the edge of the moon, causing sunlight to brighten and dim, and you get this banding effect of shadows passing across the Earth's surface from parts of the sun that are not completely covered over the edges of the limb of the moon and so on. And no one really understands it completely. There's a lot of you can read online about it if you want. I'm not going to go into about it, but it's kind of cool to watch. It's hard to observe. A lot of people will take a white blanket or white sheet of bristleboard or something, lay it on the ground, put rocks on it to hold it down, and have that white surface so they can kind of watch that white surface before and after totality. So this could be anywhere up to 4, 5, 6 minutes before and after totality, and watch for this rippling effect of the shadows of the shadow bands crossing the ground. I actually did not watch for those when we were in Nebraska for the eclipse in 2017 when the moon was going in on the sun and getting close to totality, and it's probably because I never thought of it. I was too busy watching the final partial phases. Everybody had their glasses on and waiting for that diamond ring effect so we could get our glasses off and be ready for totality. So I got lucky in that after totality, everyone's standing around excited, cheering. It's a euphoria moment of excitement. It's a really cool thing to observe. Those who've seen it know what I'm talking about. And a lot of my family had put their glasses back on and were looking at the final or the early partial phases on exit. And about 3 to 4 minutes after totality ended, my oldest daughter Catherine was standing there talking to me as I was turning on. I just turned off my camera that I had set up taking video, and there was this rippling effect for about 2.5 seconds of just ripple, ripple, ripple across the ground, across the vehicle that was beside us. It was just this weird, and I saw it, and before I could say anything, Catherine looked at me. She goes, "Whoa, what was that?" And I was like, "You saw that?" And she, "Yeah, what was that?" And I said, "That was shadow bands," and it was purely by luck. But it was also purely by luck that I did not have my glasses on when I was looking at partial. I had the glasses off, and I was still, unaided eye, looking at the ground. And I mean, I was lucky that the rock on the roadway, we were on a dirt road, was very, very light colored rock. So it almost acted like that white blanket. So it was purely by luck that we did see them on the way out. But only Catherine and I saw them. Everyone else in the family was looking back up at the sun through glasses. So it's something to keep in mind to watch for, either going in or going out. Yeah. Listen around. You're going to hear the breeze should drop out a bit. Where we were, the breeze didn't. We were wide open on the plains of the cornfields of Nebraska. It seemed like the wind never went away. But the birds did settle down. The few birds that were chirping settled down. There was a rooster down the street at a farm that actually started crowing when the sun came back. So depending on the wildlife in the area, you hear different things. If you're in the right area and you're around a farm, Everything from the cattle laying down to the animals roosting, it'll take place. Temperature drop almost everywhere you go during totality. No matter what, you're going to feel the temperature change. Even in the desert or they're in the mountains or on the plains, the temperature will drop a few degrees. That's not uncommon. Um, that's significant this year. In August, I wasn't concerned about a 6 degree, 9 degrees Celsius temperature drop standing in a cornfield under the blazing sun in Nebraska where it was 25, 28 degrees Celsius. It felt kind of nice. This year, the eclipse is April 8th. I don't know about you, but here in the Maritimes, April 8th, it can be bloody cold. I mean, that damp, cold air, it could be a nice sunny day, but it could be +5 with a breeze and feels like +1. And then if you drop 6 degrees because the sun disappears, all of a sudden it's -5 and your fingers are getting cold. It's going to get chilly. So just something to take into account if you're staying in the Maritimes or near the Canada-U.S. border. That temperature drop is going to be very noticeable because it's going to get chilly. Just a quick shot. I want to do a screenshot, show you what we observed during totality in Nebraska. So there you can see the sky's dark, not completely black. You can see the horizon. This was with the 8mm fisheye lens, but the horizon all around us looked like twilight on the horizon. The sun is that bright spot up there, top center of the frame. The moon is completely in front of it, but the solar corona is just bright enough with the fast aperture of the camera lens still to overexpose that spot. But yeah, it's pretty neat. It's definitely an experience. You don't need a telescope for this. You notice just the pass frame, you're all standing there just looking with our eyes. You do need a filter, whether it's a filter for your own eyes, like on the lower left, or filters for your binoculars, or a filter for your telescope, if you want to look at the partial phases. Partial phases will still damage your eyes. Anytime you look at the sun and don't protect your eyes from seeing the surface of the sun, you can damage the retina. So make sure you have safe solar viewers, solar filters, and so on. Take them with you. Don't forget them home. It's well, one of those things that you're going to wish you had. But during totality, you don't need it. Totality is completely safe to look at. From the time of that first diamond ring effect, when the moon's going completely over the sun, to the point of time when the diamond ring effect starts, when the moon's coming off the sun. During that totality, you don't need filters. It's fact, you want to look at it without them. It's what you're going there to see. It's to leave the filter on would be like having tickets to the Super Bowl, but watching the Super Bowl with sunglasses on, so you can't actually see what's going on the field. It's dark, right? It'd be a waste of time, waste of money too. But remember, take those filters off when you get to totality. We actually ended up at a intersection on the side of the road where there was a bunch of people who also just drove out and ended up at the same intersection on the side of the road. And there was this one truck there from South Dakota with an old fellow or his son and two of his farm workers that came down, and they had welder's glass and everything else. And we talked to them and had a good time. It was a great crowd we had there. And after the eclipse, he came over to him. He said, I'm so glad you showed up here. And I was like, why is that? I said, you guys would have saw it anyway. He said, no. He said, we were told before the eclipse that we had to have these filters to look at it, that without them we would hurt our eyes. He said, if you didn't show up and tell us take them off during that 2.5 minutes, we would have left them on and they would have missed the whole darn thing. So, um, yeah, take them off for totality. I like to say this is what you'll see. This is a great astrophoto of an eclipse and the corona and the prominences and everything. You do see a lot of that. You do see the streamers. You see the prominences. It's really an amazing event. It's really something. The diamond ring effect that I mentioned, that last little sliver of sunlight coming around through the last valley or crater on the edge of the moon, and on the way out it does the same thing, and you get this ring of light with this one bright spot is the diamond ring. Uh, Truly an amazing thing to see. You have to go do it. I mentioned that we traveled to a little side road the day of the eclipse in Nebraska when we went. Campsite we were at was nice, but there was haze in the southwestern sky or southeastern sky that kept creeping slowly northwest. So about an hour and a half, 2 hours before totality, we actually decided to pack up along with 4 or 5 other vehicles and drive northwest to where there was clear sky that we could see from the campground. We ended up, some of us, we all ended up getting split up for the most part. A couple of vehicles stayed together, but we got split up, and my family ended up at a place, intersection of roads, one called White Cloud Road. Fortunately, all the clouds were not in the way, and the sun was perfectly clear, so we got to see it. I'm going to switch over for a couple minutes here to a video. I'm going to turn the volume down for this because, like I said, it was quite windy, and I don't want everyone just to hear all the background. I don't know if you can still hear me or not. Can you still hear me? Okay.
Yes.
See if this works. So this is right at the very beginning of the eclipse. You'll see the sun's getting lighter in the sky. And we are just entering the shadow. This is actually at the point where the eclipse starts. The diaphragm on the camera, of course, is closed down because the sun was so bright, but it starts to open up in about 20 or 30 seconds here. You'll notice at the bottom of the screen, my daughter will be jumping up and down in excitement. You never know what people will do during a total eclipse. People get excited. I have once seen a video, Dave Lane has it somewhere, of him doing a cartwheel at the end of a total eclipse. It's So we're passing around the one set of binoculars we took. In hindsight, I would take more. We had 5 of our family there, one pair of binoculars. You see a few cars around. There was, like I said, there was 5 or 6 groups of people that ended up where we were at. We all had our own solar viewers for partial phases, but the one pair of binoculars. Susan and Catherine were taking photos with their iPhones, just of the horizon of the eclipse, kind of general overall views. The diaphragm's opening up now. You can see a little more of what's going on. The reason I want to show you this mainly is the length of the event. We're about halfway through now. So those who have never been to an eclipse before and are thinking of taking pictures of the eclipse on your first go, I would say double think that. It's it's not very long. I've actually heard stories. I know one person who went to an eclipse, took a bunch of telescopes and cameras, and actually said at the end of the eclipse they forgot to look at it. They were so busy with the cameras and the telescopes, they forgot to look at the eclipse. They missed it entirely visually. There are a couple stars in the sky visible there. There's one to the lower left. I think that might be Venus, actually. I'd have to go back and double check what was visible when where. You start to notice the right side of the screen's getting brighter as the edge of the shadows coming from the south or from the west there to going to the east. We were standing here looking south. And last couple looks. Oh, that was it. So that's how long it lasted. That was the length of it. Gonna, oh, we'll stay in Zoom. Gonna stop this share. Go back to my slideshow. All right. So the length of totality in Nebraska was 2.5 minutes. Depending on where you're at for this one, it could be 4 to 3.5. This is really what I want to discuss today. For those who haven't made plans, I suspect most of the diehards out here that have been at eclipses have already got their plans of where they're going for this one. We probably should have been discussing this a year ago for a lot of people who are new to eclipse chasing as to, where do I want to go see this? Do I want to just stay in Halifax and drive to Moncton the day of the eclipse? Or do I want to go elsewhere? I'm not going to talk about the States a lot. Those who are planning to go to the States have already made those plans. If you haven't, good luck. You're probably not going to find a place to stay in the path. You're probably not going to find easy transportation to get there or affordable transportation to get there or cars to rent when you get there. Everything's booked. There was a campground that we stayed at in Nebraska. The lady that ran it, that I worked with to organize the group camping when we went, told me that the week after the eclipse, a campground in Texas, a KOA campground in Texas, called her and said, "What did you do for the eclipse? We have people calling us already for 2024." And that was 2017. So the odds are better in Mexico and Texas. Weather is much better, but good luck trying to get organized now. Oh, a lot of the maps are done for the United States, but I'm going to throw them in here anyway, just to show you the path of totality. And of course, the yellow part of the map in the middle is where your greater eclipse is. The farther you get out, the shorter your eclipse gets. So basically, when you get into this red zone, kind of like Maine, New Brunswick, you get into that 2 to 3.5, 3 minute range. And the farther you go from the eclipse path, southeast to northwest, yeah, you get partial eclipse. You want to be in that path. Time of day. This one actually is quite late in the day for us in the Maritimes. 4:20 Atlantic time, 3:20 Eastern time if you're in Maine, and then down through the Ontario, northern New York, southern Ontario, you're into that 3 o'clock range in the afternoon, which also is going to affect the weather and play a role. Our weather in the Maritimes is affected mainly by the jet stream, whether it's in a winter pattern still and exiting south of the Maritimes out over the eastern states, Massachusetts area, or whether it's moved back into its spring pattern is coming out over the Maritimes, will have a great effect on what we get for low pressure systems. We can have any one of 3 kinds of systems come through that time of year, from the Cape Hatteras Gulf lows that come up from the south, which are laden full of moisture, dump a lot of rain on us. That's our spring rain events. Colorado lows, those are often mixed events in April where we get, a little bit of snow, maybe an inch of snow, 2, 3 centimeters, quickly changing to rain, mostly a rain event. And then there's the Alberta Clippers, and that's our late spring storms. So that's our, as we used to call them in New Brunswick, and those up there who are tuning in will remember, but we call those the St. Patty Day storms. I think every March we get one, and we can get them as late as April. So that's the systems. You notice how they all nicely follow the eclipse track. The other important thing about that and following the eclipse track is most of these lows, when they're in the Gulf Stream, pass through fairly quickly. They could be here for a day, day and a half, and then they're gone. 2 days later, you have another one come through. So if one of these lows is sitting over the Great Lakes, it's probably clear in the Maritimes. If it's sitting over the Maritimes, installed over the Gulf of St. Lawrence in the Maritimes, it's probably clear in the Great Lakes, which plays into, again, where do you want to be? You want to pick far ahead of time, or do you want to be kind of mobile beforehand? Cloud cover. Median cloud cover during the day of April 8th. This is based on the last 30 years weather statistics. As you can see, Mexico, nice and blue. Dallas, blue-green, fairly low cloud cover percentages. I can't actually see the side of the chart with my thing the way it is. Sorry. And then you get into the mid states and start to see the oranges and even darker orange browns getting into the Maritimes, where you get a lot of cloud cover. So this is that springtime weather patterns that gives these systems come in and they sit over us and they stall. You'll notice there's a difference in the Maritimes based on, out over the Gulf of Maine, the Bay of Fundy, and along the coastal areas. Quite a bit of difference between those on the southern part and the northern part of New Brunswick. So we'll mention that in a minute. If you draw a path along that center line, you can actually draw a graph of what your fraction of cloud cover is. And again, if you go down to Durango and Torino of Mexico, you have a 20% cloud cover over the past 30 years on the 8th of April. Get into Texas, that comes up around 45, 50, 55%, which is pretty good. Those of us that went to Nebraska, Wyoming in 2017, those were 40 to 60% odds there. So that's pretty much the same we had then. But you notice when you hit the Midwestern states, it really climbs. Get into Ohio and Indianapolis and places there, it just jumps up 70%. Drops down a little bit around Cleveland, Buffalo, Rochester, Watertown, Great Lakes. And the effect there is a local effect, and then it shoots up over the Adirondack Mountains, all the way across Maine, New Brunswick, and then all of a sudden, Miramichi, it just drops, and Tignish PEI, it's down around 65% again, and then it starts creeping up as you go across the Gulf of St. Lawrence and into Newfoundland. And those are a little bit. It's not so much large systems that are causing that, but it's the smaller systems. The western side of this chart, Texas and Durango, it's mostly large systems. They get these large highs that sit over them for days on end, so they get good weather. the effect of the mountains in the Pacific Ocean and the Gulf is big there. The eastern half of this map is affected a lot by localized climate systems. If you do travel to the States, keep in mind it is tornado season. It's April. It's probably not going to affect you on eclipse day. It might. I mean, if it does, you're not going to be where you're at because you're going to have large, massive cloud systems of upswelling from the Gulf bringing moisture up. So you're probably going to move to a different location a couple hundred miles east or west to get away from that system. But, you know, in your travels, you do have to be aware that you could be in for some really good thunderstorms, some really good shows, light shows, and tornadoes. Just a thought. For us in the Maritimes, we got to think about what we want to do locally. I'm sure there's a lot of us here that are thinking, I'm going to hop in the car on the morning of the 8th out of Halifax or Nova Scotia. I'm going to drive up to Moncton, Miramichi, and take my chances and go see the eclipse. New Brunswick's quite lucky. Coming in over Heartland, Woodstock, center line goes right across to Blackville. There's a great place to eat in Blackville, a great little place called the Pizza Trio Pizza, great fish and chips. And then kind of out over Miramichi, Rogersville. It's, yeah, really good. Except we look at those cloud cover maps. Look at the percentage of cloud cover in those areas. There's a little bit of variation across the province. Again, I mentioned the biggest one is look how clear southern Nova Scotia, the Bay of Fundy, and the coast is. A lot of this that you're seeing, this difference between the 70% of most of the coastal areas in the bay and that 85% inland is due to daytime heating cloud. This is the effect in April is we get these beautiful spring days. It could be 10, 15 degrees, but then there's all this moisture on the ground from all the snow melt and all the snowpack, and it just evaporates and gets sucked up in the air and get those beautiful cumulus daytime puffy spring clouds. And at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they're going to be quite thick, and there's going to be a lot of them. So if we're under a high pressure system in the Maritimes, you're going to be dodging these daytime heating clouds over most of Maine and New Brunswick. So that is something to consider. And it's pretty much all the way across. You'll notice there is a bit of a drop through the east of Holton down through the St. John River Valley. That's an effect of the valley itself. Of course, coming across the mountains, the Green Mountains, the White Mountains, coming out of the St. John River Valley, it jumps up again, jumps up again. Yeah, they're at Heartland. So again, those are localized effects. Those who want to go to see a big event, I know there's a couple things going on in New Brunswick. Chris, he can probably tell us more about those. I haven't paid a lot of attention to them. I do know that Heartland up in Woodstock's putting on a big show. They actually got Commander Hadfield coming in as the big guest speaker and guest patron for the Eclipse event. So it's pretty neat. They got a school there in Heartland that's a grade 1 through 8 school, I believe. And when I lived in New Brunswick, we used to go up there and do astronomy nights with the school. They had a small club and telescopes, and they would invite all the school and all the parents and everybody out. It was awesome time. So I expect the Eclipse event they're doing is going to be just amazing. The rest of the Maritimes are not great. I mean, Newfoundland, any time of the year is not great, let alone want to be during eclipse. I expect the odds there are not going to be very good. However, if you look at the map again, that very west coast of Newfoundland seems to be a little better than central Newfoundland. So if you're under high pressure and New Brunswick looks bad and you want to be on the west coast of Newfoundland, maybe hop on the ferry or take it over to Port aux Basques as a walk-on passenger, get off at Port aux Basques, watch the eclipse, and catch the evening ferry back, right? It's an option. But the important thing that I want to point out on this map is look at the cloud cover percentage around Tignish, PEI, that west coast of PEI and in the Gulf. And if you look at the map, the chart, after you leave Miramichi, where it's almost 80%, Tignish and PEI are down around 65% for cloud cover. And this is, again, a local effect. You have the Northumberland Strait, which in the summertime has the warmest water north of Virginia, but in the wintertime has some of the coldest water north of Virginia. It often freezes over. And this cold water in April is very inconducive to cloud being formed. So all that daytime heating cloud coming off the province of New Brunswick on a westerly to east flow, when it hits the coast of New Brunswick around Miramichi, it dissipates. And the west coast of PEI is clear. And then as that moisture would pass over the island of PEI, it would increase again, which it does very slowly. comes across till it exits PEI, and then it's basically out over the Gulf and then into the Gulf waters, which will be warming up. So Western PEI in Tignish is actually the best weather odds in the Maritimes. Of course, you got to get there. You got one bridge to cross. You're going to have everybody else panicking to try and get to clear sky at the same time. So if you don't stay in the Maritimes, there's always New York State. Again, the Green Mountains and the White Mountains were not great because the cloud cover from updrafts causing daytime cloud forming. But the Great Lakes as well are still very cold and have that cold water effect on moisture around them and not allowing clouds to develop for daytime heating. And again, when we look at the map for cloud cover percentage, it's pretty low up there. You see where the east of Syracuse and Watertown, you get into the Green Mountains, and then you get into the White Mountains. You get a lot of more cloud cover, but along the path itself, right along the lakes, is not that bad. The problem with going to this neck of the woods is Toronto's out of the path. So everybody we know that's an astronomer in Toronto and all their friends and anybody else is going to try to get south and in the path. The traffic's going to be crazy in this region. I saw Kim Hay and Kevin Keller on here. They're living in the Kingston area. They're in Yarker, just outside of Kingston here. They're nicely in the path in their backyard. I don't know, Kim, if you're planning on staying at home, if it's going to be nice, or if you plan to get to center line, or maybe you're going to the States. I don't know, but there are options up there. And this whole Prince Edward County region out in the islands of the lake is not far from center line, not affected by daytime heating, quite well placed. And my plan is to be in PEI. My backup plan is to stay with my buddy in Trenton, who's posted to Trenton here near Belleville, and spend the morning going down to the lake. Weather up there is 60 to 70% for your cloud cover, not too bad. And once you get east of the lakes, everything goes crazy. So that pretty much sums it up. Where are you going? Because I expect everybody's going to want to go. I don't know if anyone's going to be staying in Halifax who's an astronomer. If you are going farther than Miramichi, where are you staying? Because I expect most places are packed already. And if you do go somewhere, what's your backup plan? And unfortunately for a backup plan, most of these places along the path do not have a good southwest northeast travel route along the eclipse track. When we were in Nebraska, I know Jerry and Judy, for example, you guys got up in the morning with a few other carloads and drove 6 hours west along the eclipse path to get to better skies. You can't do that with this eclipse in the northeast. It's
Actually, we drove an hour and a half west and 6 hours back.
Okay, so you didn't go as far west as you had planned because the weather was good, but it took you that long to get back because of traffic.
Actually, Paula's correct. I reread my notes from my observing log. It took us 6 hours to get there, but 11 hours to come back.
Oh, even worse.
You bet.
So anyway, to sum up, basically, if you haven't made plans yet, you got 2 months, and I would start now if you haven't decided where you're going. And good luck to everybody because you got to go. You got to take advantage of the opportunity to try and see this eclipse in our backyard, so to speak. For some of us like Kim and Kevin, it is in your backyard. So good luck to you guys too. I may come visit you. I'm in Ontario and things don't look good. Yeah, so that's that. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Oh, look out, Kim, if it's free beer. I want to show folks this if they can see it on their screen. This was taken by me with my iPhone just after the shadow passed over us, and that's looking east of us, I guess. So it went from west to east, and you can see that it's like twilight. And to see that shadow come over you is really quite phenomenal. The way that I've always described it, because I remember Roy Bishop's descriptor of what was going to happen and when, and at the right moment, I remember, right, there should be a shadow, and I turned around 180 degrees and literally saw it come towards us, overtake us, and that picture you saw was it going away from us. And the way I described it then and still do is that you're this little itty bitty person and the cloak of Darth Vader goes over you. It's just phenomenal to see that. And it still gives me goosebumps when I think about it.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Any questions for Paul?
No questions. I have just a comment that the three of us from the Sunday Night Astronomy Show have been invited to go up to Florenceville, Bristol, actually, and we're going to present our show the night before the eclipse. And the reason why is because there's a big project going on up there called the Balloon Solar Eclipse Project. And it's being put on by a private individual who's going to launch a balloon above the clouds, hopefully. And he has 6 cameras mounted on it, and it's being broadcast through the Bell Network to 5 communities in that area. So Florenceville, Bristol, Heartland, Perth, Andover, 2 others. And so they're going to offer that the next day, of course, the eclipse day, starting around 3:30, the launch of the balloon. I'll just quickly share an image here. This is it here. It's on eclipseplus.ca. That's the name of the website. And yeah, these gentlemen here that are going to launch the balloon, it's going to be, it's already been tested a couple of times. They're doing another test apparently this week, but to be live streaming the eclipse from above the clouds. So if we don't get a chance to see it in Florenceville, Bristol, we'll be actually hosting the event inside the arena in Florenceville. Myself, Paul, and Mike will be talking about the eclipse as it's happening, and we hope to all rush outside when we get a chance to see totality. But this is something pretty unique, so we're kind of just excited about that.
Cool.
Yeah, very cool. Paul, just out of curiosity, how many eclipses have you seen?
1.
Ah.
I've only attempted.
Yeah, I remember one, I guess it was in the 60s, that went over the Eastern Townships. And I also remember that my mother made us all stay inside.
Yeah, I should say that's 1 total eclipse. I have seen 7 or 8 or 9 partials in 1 annular. So I've been in places that I've seen a lot of partials, or whether deep or shallow partials, but only the 1 total eclipse. I had plans to go to the 1998 eclipse that at the time things were looking good, and I was going by myself with a group of people, and then geology got in the way, a volcano blew up, our trip got canceled, and then when I was rebooking, it wouldn't be just me going because I had a significant other, and therefore it just wasn't affordable for me to do as a student anymore. So that one kind of got backed out of, which is too bad because the Caribbean in February with a total eclipse and the dark moon would have been really, really, really nice.